doesn't believe in his own
failures,
and he must perform all the movements in sync with the music.
this is unmatched.
Combination, he has defeated many different strong athletes. Rich is just a monster. My dear friends, good day to you all. My name is Cesar Alexander. Some people know me as a professor, a doctor of science, a urologist. Some know me as a bodybuilder, a competing athlete who now trains successful athletes. And some just know me as a familiar face. From the reels about testosterone, I'm here with you today for a reason. I decided to cover the topic of testosterone thoroughly, not in the format of a 5-minute reel that you'll forget, but to make a full-fledged series. And in order not to cherry-pick, not to select certain facts that would confirm my version or my theory, which, by the way, is what a lot of bloggers do, I decided not to do this just by speaking myself, but to gather a large number of interesting, extraordinary, and diverse people. Athletes, businessmen, my friends, people I'll be meeting for the first time, bodybuilders, arm wrestlers, track and field athletes, weightlifters, and professors from various fields. And let their stories today reveal the topic of testosterone as comprehensively as possible. Because we, as men and experimenters, we love to experiment on ourselves, we love to try new things, we love to achieve, and we love to win. And for the sake of this, sometimes we ruin our own health. Because of both negative and positive examples surrounding testosterone, testosterone is sufficient. It's such a slippery and dirty topic, and that's why today we'll try to cover it from all sides. In order to fill in as many of your knowledge gaps as possible, get comfortable, make some tea, and set up your tablet, laptop, or phone in a good spot. Let's start our journey into testosterone. It seems my hair came out with great force.
It's very difficult to answer the question of why people start using chemicals and at what stage. But I'm 99% sure that absolutely anyone, any athlete, knowing that there's some kind of natural remedy. Roughly speaking, something like ginseng, proven, that doesn't harm your health but gives you strength. We'll use this supplement, this substance. And for example, well, even with my coach, let's say, we were also constantly looking for some substances, let's call them that, substances. You'll understand why in a moment. To boost our performance, to improve our results. That is, substances, primarily some kind of plant-based ones. I remember we would find things like natural ginseng root or some kind of Sagan-Daila herb. All athletes are looking for this. That's 100%. The only question is at what stage he's ready to commit a crime. After all, there are many experiments where people, knowing there will be no consequences, are capable, for example, of stealing. Well, if nothing will happen, why not take $1 million that's just lying there, take what's not yours, and know that nothing will happen to you for it? This is absolutely everywhere. It's human psychology. And that's why for an athlete, if he understands, like most athletes, that if they take doping and are 100% sure they won't get caught, I'm sure a large number would do it.
Banned substances, specifically testosterone. These substances are typically used to help athletes recover after exertion, for bodybuilding and for gym workouts. They give the body the ability to recover. First, and then to increase muscle mass. Those athletes who use testosterone and banned substances, the main work is still hard labor, and no one cancels hard labor. The most important thing is hard work in the gym. If you don't work hard in the gym, it doesn't matter how many injections you take. It's useless. Why? I'll explain with a simple example. Those guys who have achieved great results in the world of bodybuilding. I'm going to talk now about Mr. Olympia, athletes who competed at Mr. Olympia and became Mr. Olympia, unique athletes who achieved the highest results by developing their bodies. But most of their effort was put into their desire, into their drive to change, not into the drugs. Many people use banned substances, yet they don't turn into Mr. Olympia. Those who say they'll do it easily just don't understand what they're talking about. You don't need to talk to those people since you have nothing to prove or explain.
Yes, people think that if you're on anabolic steroids, if you use them, then basically the rest is easy. You come to the gym, work out there, say 3 times a week, and that's it, and you look like Apollo. Without hellish workouts, without a diet, in fact, I would even say not even a diet, Since a person seeks lasting change, not just a temporary effect, he must transform his entire lifestyle. This is a titanic effort, and of course it's about having a schedule. Without a schedule there won't be consistency, and without consistency there won't be any results. Yes, you'll look a little better than the person next to you on the subway, so to speak. But you won't get what you really wanted. That's why overall it's a huge, painstaking job.
I tried testosterone for the first time when I was about 28 or 30.
At 30.
Well, yeah, I think it was very typical. I worked at a gym and we had a lot of bodybuilders. I never had any problems with muscle mass, let alone strength. Well, when I weighed 82 kilograms, I could squat 240 several times without wraps, just in slippers. Everyone started telling me, yeah, you're lying to us, we're professionals, we see everything. They kept saying it's impossible back and forth. It got to me, I thought, damn, everyone still thinks I'm on gear. I saw that the guys who were using something were really making progress. I thought, damn, maybe if I try something, I could make even more progress.
The first cycle was just one drug, plus actually 2 drugs in total, metandrestinolone. Metandrestinolone was up to about 5 tablets. You know how people used to say, everyone says Vasya takes 10 tablets, drinks methan every day, then that guy takes this much? I thought, well, I should start with the minimum, let's not make things up, I told myself. So I was taking up to 5 methan tablets a day. The cycle lasted a short time, no more than 6 to 8 weeks. I was also taking testosterone propionate 3 times a week, the highest cycle, and felt the effects right away. Although the drug is short-acting, it stays in the blood for no more than a day. That's the minimum cycle. It definitely gave a boost.
I've never hidden the fact that I once used anabolic steroids because at that time I needed them. I didn't use them to look good on the beach. I used them exclusively for professional sports, which was my livelihood. I realized the end justifies the means. Or I used them when I felt that I was experiencing a drop in my energy levels. Things weren't working out for me and I couldn't connect with people. I realized something was wrong. So I guess that's the second reason why you might use it. I've never used it without having money in my pocket. I always approached this only when I realized that I would have the means for doctors, for recovery and things like that. And I spent even more effort, time and money on recovery than on the actual course itself, of course. So today I am absolutely healthy, everything works for me, I have 2 wonderful children and I'm happy and glad to be alive. I don't have any side effects, unlike those people who used to point fingers at me and say, oh, you use, and so on. But now they're the ones running around hospital beds, that's all.
I wanted to drastically change myself to feel younger, and that's why I probably didn't really think about the benefits. I was more focused on the result. Yes, to regain strength, boost energy, and build muscle again. I mean, you know, to use it like some kind of constant vitamin that will get rid of all your problems.
It's a completely different kind of training. The workouts themselves don't change. They are what they are, with or without supplements. And I often get asked, like, what's the difference between training with supplements and training without them? There's no difference between training with supplements and without them. Absolutely none. I train at this volume with or without supplements. The reason doesn't matter and you shouldn't focus on it.
What did the supplements actually provide? I gained weight and muscle as I grew, but I never really trained to become globally stronger. Like, in some ways, like a power lifter or something, I just, well, worked out as much as I could. Of course, I have more muscle now and my weights have increased. My max squat was 240, but after starting testosterone propionate every other day, I squatted 310. When I was preparing for bodybuilding, well, I had a pretty serious cycle. What did it give me? Well, some health problems, let's put it that way.
Regarding the complaints I had about how I was feeling, you don't get enough sleep, you're always tired, wake up exhausted and sometimes just drift off or zone out. You lose track of things, lack energy and feel like you're missing out on moments. You try to get more done in a day, yeah, but you just don't have the energy for it. Also, you have to find the energy to go to the gym, which is essential. So basically, you either have to rest all day just to go to the gym and have a good workout in the evening, or if you've been working all day, you just don't have the energy for the gym at night. Of course, I wish I could get that energy from somewhere, like when I was 20 and be just as lively, so nothing would seem impossible.
I used to describe my condition as chronic fatigue. It seemed to me that I was just really tired, and I didn't do anything about it. I just walked around in that state, tired all the time. I just felt this fatigue all the time, even when I got enough sleep.
Of course, I tried to sleep more, rest more, walk more, spend time outdoors, not get nervous, ignore some things like not watching bad news. To create an atmosphere for myself, a constant state of relaxation, it helps a bit, but not much. You want a bigger effect? Yeah, you can't just rest for a couple of months to build up that testosterone. You need to start relaxing right away. And instantly receive results as some sort of rescue pills. All my life I've tried, every year you tried to go to the gym and start working out and you think this time it'll work. And there were many such attempts, but when I started taking testosterone, I actually started to notice real results. You lift more weight immediately and recover faster. And after working out, you still go for a walk in the evening with your friend and everything is fine. So, of course, there was a result.
I don't have anyone in my circle who is really into bodybuilding with steroids, but I do know guys who do sports using testosterone. Testosterone only, no other substances. There are results, not like top bodybuilders, but you can see the person is athletic and in good shape. And honestly, I also really wanted to be like that. But for now, we're just starting out, working towards it.
That's why some people have high testosterone and you have low. Nature may seem to favor someone else and not you, but that's normal. Two brothers were born together, but in different families. They were adopted from an orphanage, and now two genetically identical people are growing up with different testosterone levels. Why? Because one of them was lucky with his parents, for example, with his environment, with what he was taught, like how to eat properly, that he needs to do sports. And with the same genetics, one brother becomes an Olympic champion, and the other brother becomes an alcoholic from the neighborhood. There is genetics. It determines a lot, but not everything. And there is epigenetics. Epigenetics is how we communicate and how we influence the body. It's physical activity. It's the presence or absence of stress. It's taking supplements. For example, it's the noise environment. It's the lighting. When there's light everywhere during the day, that can still be understood. In the evening, we sit on our phones. In the evening, we sit at the computer. We constantly listen to loud music. Sometimes we even fall asleep with it. In other words, there are factors that destroy our testosterone. There are hundreds of them around us. And that's why for a man to stay healthy, it's very important to constantly monitor his health and work on his health. And some people do it and some people don't. And that's why even genetically identical people can have different endocrine disorders. Why does it happen to some people who seem healthy? Let's take successful people, like some musicians or singers. A person sleeps little, travels a lot, is under a lot of stress, and is constantly worried. Yes, there are many wonderful things in his life, but this lifestyle cannot be associated with a normal testosterone level in any way, so you shouldn't think that a low testosterone level is necessarily some kind of illness. Sometimes it's a consequence of your lifestyle.
When you're not cutting, you just take 250 testosterone. You're more psychologically stable. You don't have mood swings. Your life gets better. But when you're cutting, here's the thing. Even if you don't use anything, because I used to cut weight a lot when I was wrestling, your nervous system gets messed up because of the lack of carbs. For everyone, no exceptions. I haven't met people who, when they're cutting weight or drying out, didn't have some kind of problems with their nervous system.
You always want to improve yourself, like you want to be better at something. You try to achieve something at work, in relationships, you're constantly working on yourself. I'm not really working out, but I do exercises and try to avoid fatty foods and sweets, even if I'm not following a strict diet. Taking testosterone is another thing to help boost my level. Again, it's about giving yourself the opportunity to finally get that most beautiful body you want. I think it's every man's dream to, at least once in his life, have that kind of physique and be such a handsome guy. Yes, in a way, it's also motivating to look at yourself in the mirror, at least partly.
Going to the doctor costs money, taking medicine costs money, a testosterone shot costs money. Yeah, I lived on my own, so why spend it? But they don't understand that where your life improves, your income improves too. It's natural for a man to be a shark, and for him to become a shark again, able to hunt in this big ocean, he definitely needs testosterone. He'll spend 100,000 rubles today, but tomorrow that will bring him X3. Because, as I've already said, a man's efficiency increases, and then let's say even more people are drawn to him. When people see a man whose eyes are shining, when he's physically surpassing all his peers again, he enjoys this feeling, and his wild confidence makes him radiate energy. I think even this testosterone can be sensed by smell. I think that's even an opinion some people have.
Many people believe that when using testosterone, anabolic drugs and all sorts of supplements, they will become stronger and better. Many even say, oh, well, of course, you started injecting, so you can do anything now. That's just nonsense. Seriously, it's ridiculous. For example, yes, I was taking testosterone propionate every other day and squatting 310. I know people who were taking a ton of testosterone, tren, I don't even know. It was just a crazy mix. They weren't squatting 310 or even 200. They only did 150 for 3 reps and said, I'm good, I made progress. It's like you need to have the right genetics and proper training for it to work. Without all that, you'll just dry out your balls.
I've never taken big, huge doses of testosterone, you know, like when they talk about a gram after a gram. I don't know, if I had been doing a gram back then, I probably would have been walking into mirrors, damn it, you know? That would have been insane, or I would have just lost it completely. I don't get how people take such big doses. You need to understand that when you take these substances, you must use them during training for them to work. If minimal doses work, why take more? I don't see the point. And I never promoted it, I never did that. I always understood what I was doing and how much needed to be done for it to work, for muscle mass to grow.
Professional sports and chemistry go hand in hand. This applies both to some high-profile scandals and to everyday situations. When you find out that a certain person is taking something, something changes in them and you can see it. Basically, professionals usually don't talk about it because it's already obvious to everyone. By those who know the subject, why don't they talk about it among themselves? Because you already understand what the conversation is about. You can look at the person and you can analyze, immediately say whether he does it, whether he uses something or not.
God didn't bless me with a beautiful body, thin bones, or long muscle attachments. So winning first places at major tournaments is out of the question. That's just how it is, but some people are content with being among the top 6 prize winners.
Olympians and professional athletes, why are they keeping silent? Well, why would they talk about it? How do people react to this right away? That all his achievements are solely due to sports pharmacology? I would say 95% of their success is hard work and discipline. Naturally, that's part of it. And of course, also because when you win the Olympics or win some competitions, you're competing, believe me, most often against athletes who probably in 90% of cases are also using something. If you admit to this, remember Lance Armstrong, he was also competing, believe me, against people who were on doping. But then, when he admitted that he had used, even many years later, all his medals and awards were taken away from him. That's the first thing. And the second, don't forget that when we talk about something bad, sometimes unfortunately, in trying to warn someone about something, we might actually push them toward it or the opposite. Here's a clear example. In some families, a father's drinking shows some people why they shouldn't drink, and they avoid alcohol after seeing this negative example. I have friends like that, and there are people who, looking at a drinking father, will also become alcoholics. That's why testosterone is a tricky topic. And my opinion is that professional athletes shouldn't talk about it much, shouldn't promote it, and shouldn't talk about their cycles. And I fully support the policy that all professional athletes follow.
A victory achieved with doping, in theory, should bring less satisfaction to a decent person. But the person who uses doping is, in essence, already not decent.
My path in pharmacology, like that of all the guys who grew up, let's say, in the 90s, I was born in 79, I'm 44 years old now, and when I was about 15 or 16 years old, already getting into bodybuilding in basement gyms, we looked up to the older guys who offered us to try methandinone, which was sold in all the pharmacies in Russia, or I don't remember, maybe the Soviet Union. Methandinone was the first drug I tried in tablet form. And also ritibalil, yes, that's right, I remember now. And also amnodrin. Those were the 3 drugs that were available with a doctor's prescription. So we would find guys whose mom was a therapist and ask her to write a prescription on a form with a stamp. They didn't really check much at the pharmacies back then, that's all. We get methandinone and some ritabolil, but we all thought just 2 methandinone tablets would make you explode.
For me, creatine was way cooler back then. I didn't understand anything at all. Well, I took it and that was it. I didn't notice anything in terms of strength. I didn't notice anything in terms of recovery. Improved or not, I was young and already excited. I think I could have kept training on my own until 19, but not anymore. I was already done. My strength improved quickly, but ended just as fast. It was like, in my mind, I felt that genetic limit. Now I understand what it was, and the limit was near me.
You need emotion, you need self-confidence, you need a bit of a vague sense of yourself, some kind of self-control. Because, well, sometimes you might have to run somewhere. You're in some kind of self-preservation instinct, so how do you get out of it? Yes, maybe at that moment you'll make the right decision, but at some point it might be the wrong one. That's why, as I said, the logic for using banned substances is understandable, not just in sports, but in other areas, even for ordinary people. Yes, these drugs weren't created for athletes. Athletes just started using them. Looking at history, the first banned substances, like certain stimulants, were even used on horses. That's why people have always sought these same things. They were the so-called People's Commissars 100 grams during the Great Patriotic War, for example. Yes, when they wanted to dull fear a little bit. The logic is clear, but what actions should we take and how do we manage this situation? That's probably the biggest question we need to ask ourselves.
Why do people start using more? You always want more. First, I'll call it laziness, the time it takes to become a 100-kilogram lean athlete. With steroids and without, it's drastically different, especially if we're talking about the same level of quality. That's laziness, impatience, and ignorance of steroid side effects. If a person knew what could be waiting for them, I think there would be fewer of them.
Everyone aims to achieve something. Businessmen, athletes all want fame and to profit from it. Nobody wants to just be a bystander in life. That's a normal objective reason. What does it provoke you to do? Some people, let's say, turn to crime, some to theft. So these are probably certain weaknesses of a person that he can't resist, including those imposed by his environment. When it's considered prestigious to be an Olympic champion, not a healthy person, but specifically a famous person, a well-known, titled person. For example, there's the story of Ronnie Coleman, who has a huge number of children, a family, his family is provided for, but nevertheless their father is disabled. Is that good or bad? I think there will be a lot of people who will say that it's good. They would repeat this story, but others who think differently would call it wrong. That's why the truth is the kind of lie that we like. We believe in something ourselves. Sometimes it's imposed on us, but still.
Although testosterone itself is a very useful, good thing in certain doses, and if it's prescribed by a competent doctor, by an endocrinologist who looks at your tests, who makes sure you don't go overboard. But everyone wants hypertrophy. Everyone thinks that the more gear you take, the bigger your muscles will be. No muscles. It's a 24/7 routine, it's proper nutrition, it's a lifestyle. If you want to be a mutant, you have to work on your body 24/7. But it's very difficult. You have to be a rich egoist, because in our society and with the way life is now, having a wife, kids and a 24/7 job, it's hard to feed your body. That's why people think, we'll just take some stanozol or dynamic and that's it, later we can have a beer. The end.
It's all about pharma now. But how many gym athletes has it affected? First of all, probably, if we talk about the time when I came to Moscow, there were maybe 10 gyms in all of Moscow. Can you imagine how big everything is now, especially in Moscow and the Moscow region? You travel and see them everywhere, probably thousands. Athletes, the internet, and everyone wants to be strong and attractive. There's always someone to discuss it with. Well, everyone ends up coming over to this side anyway. It's just a matter of how they make the switch, whether they do it on their own or with a specialist. That's very important.
It's probably already the organizers and medical commissions. They started to understand more that doping does have some consequences, that it's really not too safe for the fighters. And they try to limit and protect them from it as well. But as I already said, so far this has only been done most effectively in the UFC.
detection of banned substances has increased. It's like, for example, if we blow into a breathalyzer for alcohol after being stopped by the police, somehow they will keep that breath sample for the next 10 years. Right now, either you don't drink at all, or, let's say in quotes, you drink a bottle that hypothetically doesn't show up. For example, in America, you can drink a few bottles of beer, in Europe, a glass of wine, and so on. I'm just giving an example. Here, everything is forbidden, of course. But now, if the equipment doesn't detect it, that doesn't mean that what they took from you today won't show up in 10 years. That's why in pharmacology and professional sports, all these improvements are happening as well. And actually, all these retests that were conducted are exactly because of this situation. Back then, the tests didn't detect it. Although the athletes followed the rules then, years later it surfaced due to improved technology. But the urine, with whatever was in it back then, remained exactly the same. So basically, what is not prohibited is allowed. If we're talking about those years, people followed the rules that were set back then. Now it's different regulations, different standards, different numbers, and so on and so on and so on. That's why, above all, the athlete, they appeal to a certain letter of the law, whether it's allowed or not. If it's allowed, then within what limits? If it's prohibited, then also within what limits? Well, of course, a lot has changed over these years, a whole lot.
Comparing past and current results, it's likely naive to think it's solely about the drug's dosage. First of all, many drugs weren't banned before, and now they've ended up on lists that you can't use anymore. When we talk about doping, you probably imagine a syringe with testosterone, but in reality there are plenty of substances that are considered doping. That's why athletes, for example, when they buy vitamins from me, they ask if there's definitely nothing in the ingredients. I say, listen, well, anyone can take these. They say that's not the point. The list is huge. There really are supplements that can generally be found in sports supplements, in pre-workouts, in some recovery complexes, which I, as an ordinary athlete, can take. But for him, it would lead to disqualification. That's why, in some cases, treating a cold or bronchitis can result in an athlete's disqualification. If we're talking about serious drugs, believe me, the dose never really matters. What matters is the drug itself, whether it can be detected or not, and how effective it is. Believe me, if everything depended on the dose, things would be much simpler in sports pharmacology. And a vivid example is bodybuilding, where I have trained many champions from Moscow, St. Petersburg, Russia, the world, and Europe. And Arnold Classy, never ever. The amount of testosterone you take will not lead you to results. If the dose determined the winner, then the most reckless, the most brainless one would win, would be the champion. And year after year, the champion is the person with the best genetics, the strongest discipline, and only probably thirdly with good pharmacology.
In powerlifting, if we take professional divisions, 101% of the guys are on something. Different dosages, different approaches. This is professional sports. Well, basically the same goes for any bodybuilding competition. Yeah, giving a doping test on stage for Proshnikov or at a strongman competition is pointless and ridiculous. People simply can't handle or endure those loads. I'm not justifying it or playing devil's advocate, it's just a fact. Some discuss it, others don't. In mixed martial arts as well, when our Fedor made his mark during the era of steroid giants, people would step into the ring with heads like that. They get kicked in the leg with a heel, but he doesn't go down.
When you get really used to this, even if you're very talented, you're used to using doping. And as soon as it's banned, all those results immediately drop. Both performances drop, and concentration during the match declines too. Because the athlete feels different, experiencing both his body and psychological state in new ways. There are a lot of factors with doping, especially after it's discontinued. Naturally, the generation of fighters has changed, a new generation of fighters has been raised and grown up, and fighters have gotten used to competing more cleanly. Well, of course, nowadays we sometimes hear and see that some fighters still get caught, that pharmacology is not standing still. There are some ways appearing to cheat doping tests, but again, the testing itself is also improving and the quality of testing is also increasing, so new methods are being detected as well. And fighters who use banned substances get caught and face consequences for a certain or specific period.
If we take testosterone as either good or evil, yes, then of course for the most part. Of course, I've seen happy people. If you take things like abscesses or something else, then of course that's probably because the person didn't approach it very carefully. I've had situations where I dealt with people who don't do sports at all. About 2 or 3 months ago, I went to visit a friend in Mamkadu and stopped by the fair there. A guy comes up to me and says he has a cafe there, offers to treat me to some pilaf and everything, so I agree. We're sitting there and he goes, "Man, Danny, I've got this problem. I'm basically depressed. I have no mood. I don't feel like doing anything at all." And he's like 33 years old. So I immediately said, "Listen, go get your hormones checked. Let's take a look." Well, they don't even think about that. Hormones or whatever. They think it's all something cosmic. And really, he does it. I just show him like, look, here you have testosterone, your hormones, and your testosterone is just off. The readings could be minimal or maximal. He had no idea what I meant. He just said I should or shouldn't train. I told him to get his hormones tested. He just prescribed him 3 pills from a sports store. I said, here, take them. Well, and go to the gym, walk around a bit just to have some movement. Well, after a month or a month and a half, everything was fine. All his results came back normal. His life immediately became more interesting. And there were many moments like that. When I worked at the gym, a lot of people came to me with similar situations. Again, I never directly advised anything like that. Serious. Everything is through PC Sport magazine, because that's enough just for everyday life. If we're talking about professional sports, when someone wants to set records or earn titles, then we're talking about different things. So for me, testosterone is basically like an elixir of youth. That is, if it's always at a normal level and your metabolism is fine, then your health will be more or less okay. Everything is under control there. But all of that is down below, and various unnecessary health issues start to appear. So you've already been through this, and you understand that this is how it works?
I think yes, definitely. There are people whose lives are shortened by this, but not in the way the media likes to portray it. A big guy, whether he's a bodybuilder, a powerlifter, from any sport, just a big muscular guy, he could go out, trip and break his leg. This is chemistry. Society stigmatizes due to misunderstanding, rejection and envy, especially envy in this case. He's on gear. I can guarantee that 100% of those people who have never used anything, even if they had access to all the gear in the world, they would never even come close to achieving what professional athletes have accomplished.
And it can also be harmful, of course, if you neglect things like dosages, if you don't listen to experienced specialists who are advising you. I'm grateful to fate that I ended up at the Mark Avreli Fitness Club at the right time. There were a lot of serious guys back then, bodybuilders and so on, who, when I wasn't experienced, explained everything to me, how it all works and what and how much you need. I just want to say that you shouldn't make mistakes, you should find good specialists. It's similar with coaches. Often you find them just hanging around at the gym. Well, he doesn't really have any titles, but people go to him because he knows more than those who are titled. Yeah, I always say, if there are titled ones, seek them out. They've experienced a lot and can teach you more than anyone else. So I was lucky, they told me things, showed me things, and I guess it all worked out.
Who's Bujik? Am I Bujik? I asked. Who's Bujik? Am I Bujik? Young man, you don't care about your words at all.
In what cases and what does testosterone do? Well, let's say our episode is called Testosterone, but still we're talking about sports, including pharmacology. Depending on your goals, different drugs are selected. Sometimes your goal is endurance, sometimes your goal is strength, and sometimes your goal is fearlessness. Yes, indeed, it's not just athletes who use pharmacology. For example, in some special forces, people going on a special operation sometimes use testosterone. Or for some important, difficult negotiations. Indeed, if a person is older, he might use testosterone to feel more confident. But in fact, all drugs have different properties, and there are drugs that we use as intended. But if we don't know what a certain drug is for, we might use it thoughtlessly, like some school students who decide to try a course for the first time and use drugs that basically aren't suitable for their goal. They try to get lean but end up turning into water balloons, or they try to bulk up and end up drying out. Pharmacology is easy for those familiar with and experienced in it. In unskilled hands, it can become a dangerous tool that will destroy your health.
Well, that's what I can remember. The first thing that came to mind was a kind of Superman feeling, untouchable, invincible. Basically, if we're talking about testosterone, it's a drug that turns you into a Superman. Where do you focus it? Like, you need to use these skills in the right way. Or you'll start getting out of control and you'll start doing things that are illegal, unlawful, and dangerous both for your life and for those around you.
When you get involved in the steroid process and when you're on a cycle, let's say your first cycle lasts more than 2 or 3 weeks, first of all, you have a strong libido, meaning you constantly want sex. Well, considering if you're 18 years old, you already constantly want sex anyway. Your strength increases much faster. For example, you come to the gym and start bench pressing 60 kilograms for 8 reps, and next to you there's a guy also bench pressing 60 kilograms for 8 reps. You complete your first 8-week cycle, and by the end you reach 150 pounds. He still hasn't reached 100. Your confidence and strength grow, and your muscles pump up more during workouts. For example, when I trained without gear, just detoxing and working out naturally, I did the exercises but couldn't feel my muscles and could keep going. I didn't get pumped. For martial arts, that's a good thing. So I think that in martial arts, gear is unnecessary because your shoulders will get tired quickly, and with gear you get exhausted fast. You do 5 pull-ups, feel your lats get pumped, and that's enough. That's it. You get pumped with blood but tire faster. Pharma really irritates the nervous system, especially drugs like Trenbolone. Actually, all testosterone types boost aggressiveness. That means you get fired up instantly. For example, if you're usually a well-mannered person, respectful to your parents, would never hurt an elder or raise your hand against a woman, and so on. When I was on gear, I could easily slap a woman if she told me to fuck off. I could curse out a cashier right at the register using the harshest language. If there was something I didn't like about her work, if, for example, she wasn't supposed to serve me, all of that happened. And sometimes you snap at someone and then after a while you realize it and it winds you up even more and you get even angrier because of it. Well, acted like a jerk. But in that moment of emotional outburst, you don't evaluate yourself. You can't stop yourself because it's not really you speaking, it's the pharma. It's like, you know, like in the movie Venom, another person has possessed you. Chemists who are already, let's say, experienced and have been in sports for a long time, they already know the side effects of certain drugs. They try to control it in themselves. And
a key point no one mentions. When people ask me about testosterone's effects, they focus on the liver, kidneys, or pancreas, but ignore the most important part, the head. A huge number of families have been destroyed because of the psychological and mental changes caused by testosterone, or more precisely, its excess. This is physical abuse, this is aggression, this is addiction, this is body dysmorphia. And today our heroes will honestly tell us about the negative psychological consequences they have faced in their lives. My main message would be for doctors, not ordinary people. Many of my colleagues, quite renowned colleagues, actually help people harm themselves. They are approached by athletes, not professionals, amateurs, or just guys who want to get in shape. People visit doctors and pay a few thousand rubles to get a treatment plan written for them. And a person who supposedly took the Hippocratic Oath, who supposedly promised to help people preserve their health, helps them trade their health for money, for appearance. He will live less, he might be, for a short period of time, good looking somewhere, but live less. He'll face many problems, higher cholesterol and increased thrombosis risk. Guys, especially young ones, should use anabolic steroids properly. In my understanding, it's the same as if I were helping someone tie off their arm with a tourniquet so they could inject heroin properly and not miss the vein. After all, I took an oath. He's going to inject it anyway without me, so let me just hold the tourniquet properly so he does it right. With my help and presence, Zabroshu.
Sometimes you can see, especially in old fights, that many fighters who are on chemicals, in quotes, come out very aggressive. They often feel much less pain during a fight, meaning they can keep going to the end, even with very serious injuries, without noticing them, which is basically unnatural for an ordinary person. So there are things like that. Plus, I think their focus improves a bit, like a combat focus, meaning their instincts get better. And with this aggression, a person reacts more successfully, performs some technical actions more effectively, becomes stronger and more explosive. Even just the feeling of strength gives any fighter more confidence.
I think if you take all Olympic sports, all kinds of sports, well, about 90% of athletes use it. Some people might want to leave a comment here and say, no, that's not true, but that's just how it is. Yeah, and we all understand it perfectly well. Even the federations in powerlifting that claim to be clean, the guys there just can't keep up because the results that the sport has reached are already impossible without using gear.
Of course, it's the path. When it comes to banned substances, it's tempting for many athletes, but it's also very unstable because once you've used it, it's hard to give it up afterwards. And it's very difficult to compete afterwards without using banned substances, which often, as we've already discussed, can ruin an athlete's career and even their health.
The effects of using these substances, I think, are available in information on the internet. It basically shows that this has a strong impact both on the mind and the body. We could probably give a lot of such examples if we look into it. The main point is for people to understand that this will definitely happen, that there will be some consequences. God willing, if genetics and your future experience of using it are within reasonable limits, if it is somehow restricted by certain norms, concepts and knowledge, then perhaps you will go through this story safely. But if it's just a Hakuna Matata attitude, it will definitely cause trouble.
I can say that probably it's the same here as in any other sport. Probably the most relevant sport to judge this by is bodybuilding. A lot of athletes, after finishing their careers, suffer from heart disease or something like that. Probably. It's the same in our sport. Plus, all of this is made worse by serious injuries received during strikes, during training, and during other activities. Very often we see how fighters' bones become fragile, breaking just from strikes and resulting in fractures. And directly during competitions as well, I think all of this could partly be a consequence of using certain substances. I'll repeat, I'm not a doctor and it's hard for me to judge because I haven't had that experience myself, so it's difficult for me to judge based on myself. That's how I understand it, and that's how I see it among other athletes. It doesn't really improve overall health in the future if we're talking about the long-term perspective of life, performance, and so on.
When someone tries a cycle for the first time, not a full cycle, but just wants to try something to bulk up, it's always something small, minor, rarely any big cycles. People often believe oral drugs, like pills, are safer, but it's usually the opposite. They buy them, expect a strong effect, and end up feeling fearless. After some time, when you want more, you want something stronger. Every time you expect something bigger, you start using whole stacks, full cycles. You Google things, look for advice. Experienced off-roaders in the gym naturally give you advice, and you trust them. Little by little, you end up doing what used to push you away. When you weren't attracted to big athletes before, you didn't want to be like them. Little by little, you yourself become one of those guys who, in general, would never have attracted you in terms of wanting to look like them. And then you start to neglect how to properly do injections. You stop disinfecting as much. You inject not into the glute, but into the leg. I had an acquaintance who would inject right through his jeans into his leg, through a hole in his pants, injecting into his leg while driving right on the road. He would stick the syringe into his right leg and give himself injections. That's not very good. Naturally, they don't check the quality of the drugs. They buy underground ones. That is, most of the drugs used now in sports pharmacology are not pharmacy-grade drugs like they were, for example, in the 80s or 90s.
Before doing anything, of course, you need to wait for the test results, but instead of making things up or fantasizing, let's be more realistic now. You need to get tested and understand what your current testosterone level is, your testosterone, and some other things as well. Indicators, and then decide whether you need to do it or not. But I think the test will show what needs to be done. But I think that about 90% for sure will show that there is no big deal.
My advice for preparing for a testosterone test is simply not to prepare. In the morning, avoid exercise, sex, and eat nothing. Ignore the 4 preparations some doctors suggest. We don't need to get satisfaction from getting supercompensated testosterone numbers. In the morning, we need to see your situation. That's why it's better to do the test closer to 11 or 12 o'clock when you're no longer at your testosterone peak. That way, you'll be more or less closer to the levels you live with every day. Because we're not applying to some space academy after all. We need the truth, not the highest possible supercompensated result that our testicles can show.
Before prescribing testosterone, a full examination is necessary. That's how it is for me. An absolute contraindication is unresolved hypoxia. It manifests exactly the same way as testosterone deficiency, weakness, drowsiness, fatigue, decreased libido, erectile dysfunction, and so on. Testosterone, of course, levels this out for patients. Hypoxia will not go away, and in the end, untreated or undertreated hypoxia will progress with testosterone. Some people experience an increase in muscle mass and the muscles pull more, they need the most oxygen. And what do we get? If a person came to lose weight, they will gain weight like a wrestler with intelligence, and their muscle mass will also increase. It draws in oxygen and fat mass too, because fat doesn't burn without oxygen. Well, sooner or later, this can end up with that very heart failure. So, how can you protect yourself? Check erythropoietin. Erythropoietin, it should be at the lower end of the normal range, never at the upper end. Apparently, the upper limit hasn't been clearly defined yet either. And check the protein, the heart failure marker, pro-B-type natriuretic peptide sodium and natriuretic peptide. If it's higher, then it's not about testosterone anymore, and it's already too late for testosterone. Because if there is heart failure, testosterone will lead to an increase, naturally, in ambitions, both sexual and athletic, but also sex and sports. For people without heart failure,
You don't necessarily need to boost testosterone with pharmacology. Again, if it's just for your health, if you're just a regular fitness enthusiast, it's enough for you to just go to the gym. Well, just move more and eat right. Again, you can even get some things not just in a regular store, but in a sports store. And I have all sorts of Karelian balms. All of that has its place, so to speak. Of course, the more you do all of this, the more it will develop. Look, Moses. Simply put, I always compare it to mountain people. Women there grow mustaches. I always say that people there just breathe testosterone, and it doesn't show, but they have it there. We live in a polluted city with lots of exhaust fumes. We eat all sorts of junk, so we've blocked everything in ourselves and are slowly dying. That's why we need to open all this up. Eat right, stress less, rest more. That's it. Go to the gym, move around. Movement is life. Testosterone production also increases as a result.
in professional sports, thank God, this is not allowed. Testosterone is banned, it's doping, it's a very powerful doping agent, but in other sports, in sports like bodybuilding and so on, testosterone is used. Of course, yes, always. First of all, without testosterone, you can't build a beautiful body without it, since testosterone is essential for a great physique. Muscles. Men love muscles. If there's little testosterone, there will be little muscle. And when you feel it, and this is also about the body, it's fearlessness, shamelessness, and to feel it just once, it's the most powerful drug. Of course, after that, it's hard to get off that needle, so it's better not to overdose.
Testosterone is the top hormone. It's one of the best things for humanity. While often used in men's therapy, I believe it's also great for women. As a doctor, you'll likely say it has a much broader use. The main harm that's caused, and what causes it, is everything around Batana, Winstrol, their quantity, and Trenbolonis. Insulin is just a nightmare. How many people have died from insulin? I mean, really, how many bodybuilders have died from insulin, fallen into a coma? A dude I know came to see me. He was sitting there, oh God, Kalatastin. Because of what he was eating, he was so toxic. We went together. I regretted taking him to a Georgian restaurant. He ate a kinkali and washed it down with yasuntaki. That's when I realized how a person can rot from the inside, when he started burping along with it. Well, it's just... I told him, damn, we're driving. I said, buddy, honestly, it would be better if you just, excuse my language, it would be better if you just let out some gas here than what you're doing now. You're burping. It's like something dead. It was just that bad. It was a toxic drug. In the end, he burned out. He set a record, but paid for it by damaging his stomach for life.
Understanding why young guys start taking courses, I would tell them to consider what's more important to you. Being muscular and attractive to girls, or being smart because your mind will feed you for your whole life. Set your priorities. What's cooler, being a big guy or being a smart guy with a profession? If you ask yourself this direct question, I'm sure some people will choose the first path. They'll still want to work hard in society. They'll want things to stay the way they are now. Their main goal now is to impress girls, so they'll do it no matter what we say. Just do it wisely. Get tested, get checkups, not just once a year, maybe a bit more often. If you still want to do it, look for quality substances. And not just when some friend of yours brings you something homemade from somewhere and so on. But I still think that most people, once they start thinking this way, will begin to learn.
A lot of guys write to me saying, I want to start a cycle. I'm 20 years old. What should I do? What substance should I use? And so on. I tell him, you don't need to start any cycle or use testosterone. You're basically walking testosterone yourself. Your body has so much of your own testosterone that it's more than enough. If you train properly, follow routines, and recover, you will grow. If a guy is around 40 or older, then of course, that's already a question of whether it's worth it or not. His vital functions get worse, and they will continue to get worse. For some men, it happens sooner. For others, later. It's inevitable, so everyone should be ready. I believe that some minimal doses of testosterone will only help him. I haven't seen a single person who would say that it's bad or that their health was negatively affected specifically by this medication. I mean, I don't know. I believe that for an average person, it will also be beneficial, but you need to understand what doses to take, and you definitely need to do this with a doctor.
All sports have specific goals and objectives. In bodybuilding, the goal is to achieve maximum muscle growth. That's why when people see big muscles like a bicep over 60, they assume, oh, that's a bodybuilder, he must be on gear. Although pharmacology is used a lot in track and field, swimming, cycling, and martial arts. By the way, this was actually the cause of death in mixed martial arts. Do you remember there was that black guy with a shaved head with Fedya? He slammed him with a suplex. And Randleman, yeah, him too. It's a heart problem because the loads are different, much heavier. He was on gear, you could tell. Tyson was on gear too, he doesn't deny it either. That's it. That's why people use gear in many sports, and I'll tell you, in track and field they use it even more. Especially before the 80s when the labs weren't as advanced as they are now. I'm not making this up. We had a late video blogger, Vitaly Sidorov, director of the Professional Power Extreme League. He was a participant in 2 Olympics in discus throw, and he told us how they were given just horse-sized doses there. I don't even know how they passed doping control. People see a big bodybuilder and assume it's steroids. But have you ever thought that a person who runs 100 meters in under 11 seconds, it's also Winstrol? Well, there are a lot of new things out there now, all sorts of different ones.
I believe that if there was no testosterone, and in medicine in general, it wouldn't have ended well.
And if you remove the prescription, let's say, make it open and available to everyone, if you want it, you buy it.
For everyone. I don't agree with that. That doesn't mean you should give it the green light. Let anyone buy it and do whatever they want with it. I think that's wrong. As for ordinary people who just walk around not connected to any sports if they need it. This medication is meant to improve your health, and of course, it requires a prescription.
The harm from this therapy, of course, lies in the fact that people exceed the dosages and combine these medications. If testosterone is used for medical reasons, it usually has a positive effect in most cases. But if it is used without indications and in high doses, combined with other anabolic steroids, naturally this leads to complications such as the development of heart attacks and strokes. I would advise young people not to get involved unless it's necessary, unless there's a clinical need, because even in young people there is no direct correlation. But of course age plays a big role, but even young people can experience a decrease in hormone levels. If there are no medical indications for this therapy, then I strongly advise against starting it, because it can lead to irreversible consequences and reduce both the length and quality of life. But if there are clinical guidelines, if there are indications for hormone replacement therapy, and your doctor has directly prescribed this therapy to you, refusing it based on your own personal considerations and fears is not advisable. This is extremely reckless, because according to modern research, there is a direct link between using these medications as indicated and improving the prognosis and quality of life for people who use this therapy.
We are used to getting clear answers to clearly stated questions, but to the question, is testosterone evil or good? We don't get an answer, even though it seems like we've already asked so many people how beneficial or harmful it is. For one person, it's a panacea. For another, it's just a whim. He felt nothing and thinks it's unnecessary. One doesn't change at all, while another becomes a psychopath. When using testosterone, some people gain dozens of kilograms, while others on the same drugs, on the contrary, start getting sick more often. He can't gain any weight, and aside from complications, he won't get anything from taking testosterone drugs. So where is the truth? Really? It's like having lunch with friends at your favorite restaurant. You all eat the same dish, but in the morning, one person feels sick, while another feels fine. Unfortunately, everyone's story is unique. And when you look at the success of some professional athlete, you shouldn't think that you can repeat their path. Just as you shouldn't think that taking testosterone always leads to complications. I want to cover this topic from all sides. So let's talk not only about the good, but also about the dark side of using sports pharmacology and testosterone. Let's talk about what happens and why changes occur in the body that can even lead to a fatal outcome. Let's turn to the professionals, and we'll talk about this in the second episode of our testosterone.